Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today, it's a very special day, and we have a special guest with us as well. And his name is Philip Clifton, the Divisional Managing Director at IMI Hydronic Engineering. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And Phil is joining me today because we also have a special announcement to do. So we are starting a special season, not only to cover the best of the best on the scale-up world, on the corporate world, on the investor world, to help our businesses to scale in a general perspective as the original Scaleup Valley podcast with 150 plus episodes so far, with the likes of Qualtrics, Customer, Buyer, BASF, among other amazing scale-ups and corporate leaders, not to talk about some of the investors that we had on the show. So we wanted to do a special season to cover the future of the engineering, construction, HVAC, and energy industries. So we want to bring the best leaders from those industries in a special season in partnership with IMI Hydronic Engineering. And our first guest in this season is Phil Clifton, as I said before. Phil, again, we are very grateful to join this vision and to have this common vision with you and your team. And it would be amazing to get to know a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm an engineer originally, mechanical engineer. I've always worked in engineering groups, some large groups, and also a few years ago, I set off on my own and set up a small group of oil and gas businesses, again in flow control, but funded by private equity. So I know many of the things you're going through as scale-ups, and I can appreciate that, having done similar things myself. I joined IMI about 2.5 years ago, really proud to be leading the Hydronic Engineering division. I love it here, great people and some fantastic opportunities.
That's amazing. And let's get to know a little bit more about IMI Hydronic Engineering as well. So let us know more about the business, the stage of growth, some of the challenges that you are facing, etc., etc.
So hydronics is all about water-based cooling and heating systems. So it could be radiator systems, it could be underfloor systems, radiant, and so on. And where we're good is actually providing the valves and the control systems in those heating or cooling systems. And our heritage is very much from the valve side. So we were pioneers in balancing those systems. We're pioneers in thermostatic control, and we're pioneers in pressurization and water quality. So we can do a lot to save energy in those systems. And that's what gives me a buzz every day.
Absolutely. I know it proves that you are joining for the first podcast of the first episode of this season, that you are personally looking forward to create the future of the industry. And you know that to create the future of the industry, we need an ecosystem, we need a community, and we need different players to work together on that vision. So what is your view on that future and on the challenges to get to that future?
So we can see from a fairly stable business that we're entering a period of massive disruption. And the disruption's coming from digital, from more intelligent systems, more intelligent local valves, and the big drive, of course, in the world to save energy. And 40% of the world's energy is used in buildings. About 25% of the world's energy is used in heating and cooling buildings. And from what we do, we can save a big chunk of that. Typically, if we can get involved in the design of the system, if we can also make sure it's properly maintained, we can save about 25% of the energy involved in heating and cooling buildings. And that's an amazing thing. It gives me a buzz every day to think that we're really doing good in that way.
I think it's a great point, especially when we are discussing climate change and we are seeing all those fires across the world, and not to talk about our special COVID-19 that I try to avoid as much as possible nowadays, to focus on what we can control. And you know that we always discuss on the show 3 critical ingredients to scale. So we have compressed these ingredients on our working with scale-ups, and also given the feedback and the stories that we have been covering on the last 150 plus episodes, and we invite our guests to challenge those ingredients as well, so we keep improving them. Number 1 is radical focus. Number 2 is world-class leadership / team, and number 3, a culture of execution. Starting with number 1, radical focus. So it's very easy, as we know, it's thinking from a scaling perspective and from a corporate perspective, to distract ourselves. And we like to say that even in the startup stage, or even a little bit later on the early scale-up stage, if we are not disciplined about what are our core customers, what is our product, what are the regions, what are the geographies that we are the best fit for, we can slow down growth or even kill the company on that growth. So on a corporate perspective, it is also important to double down on the strengths, as we say with scale-ups as well. So it's much more about doubling down what is working, not about starting to invest too much. In the corporate perspective, you can invest a little bit more on some hypotheses to disrupt, to create the future instead of being disrupted. And this can be a little bit more difficult in a certain sense. But my question, I guess, and that's a very complicated one, I'm sorry for the articulation of this question, but even for myself, I keep trying to understand how to help leaders to do it better, is what is the perfect trade-off of focus and creating the future, right?
So for me, the focus, and we don't always get this right, and I would say in the past we've often got this wrong. But for me, the radical focus has got to be on finding good customer problems to solve. Mm-hmm. So we can, as a corporate, get very distracted. So someone will come up with a good idea and we'll rush off and develop a new product, but perhaps it doesn't really solve that customer problem. So we have to be really, really focused in on the customer, what's keeping them awake at night, and how we can solve that for them. So that's what the focus has got to be for me, and how we really focus a whole division on solving those customer problems.
And I like to see, so for the audience to have some context, IMI is around 2 billion in revenue at this stage. So I would like to challenge scale-ups that are going from, I would say, 1 to 5 million ARR, or 5 to 10, or 10 to 50, or 50 to 100. So how they get to the next stage. And I also like to discuss with leaders of big ships how they get to the 5 million or to the 10 billion mark. And you have something that I like it a lot, which was the fastest way to get to a 500 million business. So I would love you to share with the community as well.
The fastest way to get to a 500 million business is to start with a 1 trillion business, because you can make so many mistakes, and very big businesses can be easily disrupted. So that was the serious joke that I made to you when we actually talked.
I love it.
It's very, very easy to do. And so that's why we have to be really careful. I mean, I've got him just in my division, and we're the smallest division in IMI. We've got 2,000 people, and there's a lot of distractions. There's lots of things that are going on all the time, and we have to be careful that we, don't get distracted from those customer problems, and we don't get distracted from growth. And growth is what we're about, profitable growth, and that's what we've got to do.
And that is a very, and maybe jumping to the second ingredient, the world-class leadership / team. This is an incredible balance, and doubling down on radical focus is repeating again and again our mission, our why, our vision, and our values. And at the same time, staying loyal to those big statements that are really amazing foundations of the business. And I think as the business grows, and for all scale-up leaders out there, this is important for you because this is kind of your DNA. This is something that you need to repeat. And usually you figure out this at 100 plus people on the organization when you need to have everyone on the same page, part of the same DNA. If you are not doing it from the beginning, it might get difficult. On the corporate perspective, of course, you also need to repeat this again and again and again because it's a very large organization with a lot of people. It's easy to forget, and it's important to remind them even more. But at the same time, it's necessary to challenge them about what is the next milestone in relation to achieve our vision. And why am I talking about all about this? Because this is all about world-class leadership and world-class teams, because it's impossible to communicate and to remind all organization. And this is not a job of one person. This is not even a job of just the leadership team. It's a job of all leaders across the organization to keep reminding this again and again. Would you like to comment on this?
I think in the phases of growth, as companies grow, say from a one person company, hopefully you don't have too many arguments then. If you do, you need some help. As you grow from a team of that, to a team of 10, to a team of 100, to a team of 300, to a team of 3,000, that really does change how you organize and how you operate the business. And if you want to move really fast and you have a particular project to execute, quite often a command and control type culture can be very good at that. And you have one person just directing operations and tells everybody what to do. Unfortunately, that doesn't encourage innovation. So what I've been trying to do here in IMI Hydronic is very much to create more empowerment in the business, but with associated accountability, but more freedom for people to innovate, and to really create an environment where people feel free to dream ideas that perhaps they couldn't in the past, and people feel free and able to fail fast. So to put a bit more risk in there, to know that on some things we will fail, we won't succeed all the time. And so for me, that's the balance you've got to get. If you're going to have innovation, you've got to have lots of test and learn. You've got to have the ability to fail fast and then pivot or kill particular projects. And big corporates are not very good at doing that in my experience. And that's what we're working very hard on being able to do, to create that culture.
Absolutely. And we just discussed a very important word, which is collaboration. Right? So it's internal collaboration, how to make or how to stimulate, how to incentivize that 2,000 people collaborate with each other. And some of them might not even know each other in the organization of this scale. And even more difficult to collaborate with the community, the ecosystem out there that is going into the same direction or into different directions that can be beneficial, because I know that something important for you is also diversity of thought. We will have the opportunity to discuss this in the third ingredient of scaling up. But what was your approach in terms of also building a team to work on that community, on that collaboration front?
One thing that I've learned over the years is the more diverse you can make your team, the better the decision making. And that's got to be combined with challenge. So the ability to be able to challenge within that team. So you can have diversity, but if you don't have the inclusion side of the equation and the ability for everybody's views to be taken into account, heard, and people can challenge each other, then you don't get the benefits. So I love working here in terms of my team, because there's 9 of us, there's 8 different nationalities. We all have different views of the world. We have 3 women in the team. It's very, very diverse in many different ways. And sometimes it may take us slightly longer to get to a decision. But wow, when we come out and when the decisions are made, they're really good. Quite often I go into meetings and I think, I know where this is going to go. I know where this decision is going to come. And I come out very surprised. And I think that's very healthy. We have a term here about challenge, and we call it radical candor. And that's really being very honest with other people about what you think about their ideas or their opinions and so on. But we have to have radical candor with kindness. So we do it in a way where we preserve the relationships, where we're working together well and developing together. Now, I would see that applies just as much outside. So when we're dealing with startups, partners, and so on, you have to have that trust, but you also have to have that ability to challenge each other and really understand where each other's coming from. Because if you don't have that, you will lose the benefits of the diversity. And that, for me, working with scale-ups is about increasing that diversity in the organization.
Absolutely. And I loved your point about getting to a level of leadership and a level of team maturity that you are able to fight with each other without killing each other. So it's having that radical candor with kindness, and no one in the room has any questions that what we are trying to do is the best for everyone in the room, not to personally attack each other and put our peers in the line, right? So it's something very, very important, and I summarize that about assuring that we have a healthy and aligned team at all stages. And having an healthy and alignment is what you just shared. It's having that diversity and that freedom and that trust and that safety to say what you think is the best for the team, and also not assuming because there is someone who is the CEO or the managing director or the leader of the team that he might be the one who has the right answer. And at the same time, having the kind of disagree and commit to my mentalities, I expressed my views, but I know we have a leader of the team that is the one who makes the final decision. And I expressed my view, and now I trust that we are moving into this direction. So I disagree, I express my view, and I commit to the direction that we are going to. Because I think that sometimes people confuse this component of challenging and expressing different views, and then they block execution because they don't believe that we should go into that direction, and that execution doesn't happen. And maybe we bring the fourth ingredient, this culture of execution that we already introduced here. So it's curious to see that a lot of scale-ups are very afraid to become corporate, let's say, as it is, in the way that even some of the scale-up leaders have been working in corporates or have been corporate leaders, and they wanted to not have all those rhythms, all those structures, but they understood at a certain stage of scale of their organization that they need to have those dailies, those weeklies, those monthlies, those quarterlies, those annual rhythms. So how do you assure and how do you motivate execution in your organization?
So I think for me, the culture part is right. Some of the things you said, I would absolutely agree with. But one thing at the end of the day, certainly, if you're banking on me making every decision, that would slow the organization down. So we have to push out that decision making as well, so that people feel within the framework, they know the framework they're operating in, they know the vision of what we're trying to do. The more we can have those decisions made locally with accountability, the better. So that's the only area I would really add to you. We've got to create a lot of small businesses within this big corporate. Now, clearly, we have to have, as a corporate, we have to have processes and systems and so on, which is a bit different. And you talked about the fear of a scale-up becoming corporate. There's actually a fear the other way around as well, of people feeling that they're almost adrift, really, within the organization, the risk attached to that. So it works both ways. But I think the way it comes together in terms of execution is making the decision making as local as you possibly can to the customer, and it comes back to the customer's problem, and making sure you're solving that locally. And if you can do that, you can then do that with pace, because things happen much quicker if you can make that locally. So, and what I don't want is for me or my team to be slowing down that reaction to the customer. And that's what we have to be very careful of.
And I love the point that you are making again and again and again. And maybe it's time for me also to listen, because sometimes we are saying very important messages in the show. And I think that's also the beauty of any podcast or any book that we read, is we can listen it or read it again and again. And because we are becoming different human being across all our learning and growth curve, we will listen to different things. And what we are here discussing is how to create an ecosystem, a community, to create the future of the industries that we are covering in this season. So engineering, HVAC, construction industry. And what Phil is telling us again and again and again, it doesn't matter what kind of collaboration we are having, we should create that future to help the customer to be successful and to be focused on solving the pain or even creating benefits for the customer. And that is what matters. So we need to work together to make it happen, not just to say that we are collaborating, right?
Yeah, it's, for me, that's what unites things. That's what unites the ecosystem. It's that focus on an industry or a customer problem that certainly we couldn't solve on our own, and probably actually the scale-up couldn't solve on its own. But the great thing about the scale-ups is that they've normally found a good customer problem, and they're really getting on with trying to solve it. And if we can help solve it with them, that's great. The partnership for me is all about solving that problem.
Yeah, I love it.
It's got to be a win. It's got to be a win-win situation. The last thing we want to do is see a scale-up we're working with fail, because if they fail, that means they failed to solve the customer problem. And if it's a real big problem there that needs solving for the benefit of mankind, for saving energy in the future, for climate change, we need to make sure that that's solved. So, it's got to be a win-win for the startup and a win for us as well. And perhaps most importantly, a win for the customer or win for the industry problem.
Absolutely. And it's also curious to see that Scaleup can be very niche-oriented to focus all their efforts in a specific customer segment with a very specific product to solve the needs of and the desires of that specific customer segment. And this would fit, that collaboration would fit very well maybe on the platform that the corporate has been creating, and that doesn't have the capacity to focus so much on that customer segment, but can provide a larger scale distribution channels and understanding of different markets that would also be beneficial for a Scaleup.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also quite often scale-ups will come with a more diverse view of potential solutions. And they're very good at busting assumptions. Being a big business with a lot of heritage and a lot of experience in the industry, we also, as part of that, carry some baggage of some very big assumptions. And those assumptions quite often need busting. And that's throughout the organization, including me. I make assumptions which are probably not still valid as we're moving into new disruption or new technologies.
That's great. I love the commitment and especially the importance of really making this partnership successful to serve the customer and being aware of the different stages of growth that we are in and the different styles of leadership and different ways to see the world. So something that we don't want to happen and that we are working hard on building this ecosystem is to not distract neither the Scaleups, neither the corporates. So it's to double down on their success and to speed up their success. This is important because we know a lot of programs, unfortunately, that have a very good intention. I'm sure that all the people behind them have the best intention in the world to help each other, but because they have different languages and different ways of seeing the world and they are not able to create the empathy to be on the other side, it's very difficult to support each other. And at the end of the day, it's a huge waste of time, energy, resources, and this dangerous distraction that we talked about in the beginning of the show. Phil, I know that you are very committed with that. I'd like to give a final word on that perspective as well.
I think there needs to be a lot of humility in this. Certainly from my point of view, because IMI Hydronic is a big company, it certainly doesn't mean we have all the answers. In fact, it's quite the reverse. And if we're really going to solve some of these big industry problems out there, if we're really going to make a massive difference to energy efficiency and climate change, we need to move fast. And if we're going to move fast, we need that diversity of thought, both internally, but also with people that we're working with. And we need to move at pace with those people to really get to grips with those problems, understand them, and then come up with some great solutions.
That's amazing. And you will have a lot of fun. So this is for our community members and also for you, Phil, that you are not aware yet. We are already preparing the upcoming episode with the Scaleup. Its name is Inapter, and they are working on an electrolyzer based on hydrogen to really create sustainable houses and sustainable solutions in the HVAC industry. And what I enjoyed a lot on the prep call with the founder and the chairman of Inapter was that kind of sense of urgency and passion. So we can't wait. So the world needs this solution, and we want to make this solution as cheaper as possible, as people don't need to think about the environment, think about their own good, because it's a cheaper solution than anyone else. So I don't want people to make a decision in between their financial situation and the environment. I want to make it very easy. So it's good for it. It's cheaper. It creates more margin, and at the same time, it's the best solution for the environment. And this is the kind of summarizes all the points that we discussed today: radical focus, world-class leadership / team, and culture of execution, that sense of urgency. So we got to the final segment of the show, and we are wrapping up. So with our favorite question. So if you would have the opportunity, Phil, to meet your younger self, and you can decide when you were joining IMI or even on your times at the PE industry, what advice would you offer to your younger Phil?
I think for me, is working in an industry you feel very passionate about. And I suppose I'm further towards the end of my career now. And I have worked in companies like oil and gas in the past. I feel so passionate about the climate now. If I was talking to my younger self, I'd be asking myself to do things differently when I was younger, and really driving change then, because there was more time. All I can do now is for my legacy. I don't want my legacy to be that oil and gas legacy. I want my legacy to be what we're doing now, and really moving fast to help create a better world for the future. So we're all about really using our engineering skills, our knowledge, our solution finding abilities to solve those customer problems. And I'm so passionate about it. I just want to be involved. I just want this business to be involved. I want us to be out there working with whoever we can to solve these problems.
That's great, and I must say that it is not because we are partnering, but I really admire your humility and your approach to working with scale-ups, and also for being always so open to listen other views on the topic. So Phil, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you for asking me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, and to you that are on that side, seeing us or listening us, we will keep bringing you the best of the best, so you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. And this is a very special episode in partnership with IMI Hydronic Engineering, where we bring the best of the best in the engineering, HVAC, and energy industries. See you soon, and keep scaling.